Let me just turn the light.
You're all right. I've got to do the titles yet anyway. You'll be fine.
Oh, that's it.
Let me turn the light. That's better.
Okay, go.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Flory Models Live. Here we are with you on the 2nd of April 2020 with our very special guest, as you can see, Bill Lewis, Pramjit from Airfix. Good evening.
All right.
We finally got you in here.
Fine.
Not exactly how we originally wanted to do this one, because obviously what we wanted to do is obviously Pramjit come down here and we'll do a proper interview. We're still going to do that, but we'll do that when we're all out of quarantine and we'll do this all a little bit properly afterwards. But for the moment, we thought it'd be great to have him on. Obviously, a lot of you know him. He is a member of Flory Models. I do have to get that shameless plug in there as well, and has been for a while. And as I say, as now a project designer for Airfix, he can fill us into all the glory details. So what I'm going to do is grill him, as always we do with all our guests, and then you guys over on the Flory Models with the chat, you can join in as well and then post any of your questions. Some of you have already done it already. We've got them in the forum. He's had a look through already. He's not going to answer any of them. No, he will. And we'll go through it like that. And as always, we are joined by Mr. Matt Ball, who's with us as well. Hello. Which is good because he's like a history buff. He's like the Norris McWhirter of kits.
No, just a nerd.
What was it you said earlier? I really need a hobby.
Yes, a real hobby.
So yeah, he needs a real hobby that doesn't go on about this and things like that. So yes, so good evening to everybody who is over in Flory Models Land. Obviously we're not streaming to, well, we are streaming to YouTube live, but we're not doing questions for tonight, purely because there's going to be so many of them, I should think, and we'll get literally buried as it goes through. Yes, Phil gets the thumb screws out. No, I won't, I'll be gentle. It's not like he's one of the nasty companies. I really go for the throat anyway. So from that point of view, I will be gentle with him. He looks terrified, bless him. Relax, you'll be fine. We're not that scary this side of the camera, honest. So anyway, if you have got any questions in live chat, we'll do those afterwards, because what we'll do is I've got my questions first. So me and Matt will grill him slightly. And then we've got the other grilling questions, obviously, that you guys have put up in the forum as well, in the thread. If you want to add any to those, do it right now. And then what we'll do, we'll turn it over to actually the chat as well, so guys can ask him anything you want to along those lines. Right, you ready for this?
Yeah, go on.
Here we go. Right, okay, so these are my usual questions. For the people who followed me before will know all about these ones, but it's always a good grounding and gets you going with it as well. Okay, how did you get into the hobby?
I done a few models when I was a kid. I think maybe I got some models from Model Zone, RIP Model Zone, and done them as a kid. And then about, yeah, it was 10 years ago, a couple of months from now, in 2010, I went on holiday to California, went to San Diego, and in San Diego they have the USS Midway Museum, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Went on that museum, and then all of a sudden got back into it, and I was like, I want to build a ship model kit, and ended up buying 1 350 USS Nimitz.
Right. As
you do when you get back into the hobby. Didn't do that great at the time. I thought it was amazing, but now looking at it, it's just like quite bad. Yeah. But yeah, then I got into it from there, and then slowly worked my way up.
Very good. Right. Okay. How did you get into the modelling? Was there any family you ever did it before? Are you self-taught or anything else like that?
More or less self-taught, to be honest. I remember doing a few model kits when I was a kid. Never done it. Never painted them properly.
Yeah.
Never. Always got glue on the canopy and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it must have been a Eurofighter Typhoon, from what I can remember, or something like that. It was definitely a Revel kit. Mm-hmm. A couple of Revel kits, and then I remember doing some Revel cars, and then I remember when I done the cars, that was when I discovered how to decal and what a decal actually was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you did. To be honest, this is must have been younger than 10, at least. And then I remember in 2005, I was about how old was I? Must have been about 11 or so, 11, 12, and then Star Wars Episode 3 came out, and there was a few model kits that came out. Mm-hmm. Then I remember doing some model kits like that, like the Republic Venator class Star Destroyer. I remember doing that, and I only done it with PVA glue, and just put it in grey primer, and that was it.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I think, and then after that, got back into the hobby doing that Nimitz class carrier, and I haven't looked back since.
Very good. Right. Okay. So first question, proper one then. With the exception of Airfix, because clearly that's biased. Okay. So if Airfix wasn't around, who would be your favourite manufacturer?
Probably be a toss-up between Tamiya and Edward, but back then I was more into more modern jets, so like F-15s, F-16s, stuff like that. So I'll probably say Tamiya just because of the subject.
Yeah.
But what I wouldn't mind Edward now, because obviously they do some really good World War II stuff, and I'm kind of into the World War II stuff now, working with Airfix.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, so going through your fantastic workroom, which Pranjit was just showing us around a minute ago, we'll do it again in a minute because it's well worth seeing. But anyway, your go-to glue, what's your favourite glue?
Tamiya extra thin, and then the Tamiya white top cement.
Yeah. Okay, your go-to filler?
Perfect plastic body.
Right, okay. Your go-to sander?
Yours.
Okay, your go-to scribing tool?
I don't scribe. I just skip it.
Right, okie dokie. Fair enough. Does that go for riveting as well? Do you ever
yeah, to be honest,
re-rivet?
if I have to scribe, I might just use that trumpeter one if I have to, or maybe the JLC saw, but that's really only if I have to.
Right, okie dokie. Right, go-to primer?
The Badger Stein Res, but yeah.
Favourite paint brand?
Right now, I'll probably say AK Real Colors or Tamiya LP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're
Those
quite
one
into
of-
the lacquers then with the LP range?
Yeah, just because the way I like to spray paint now is at the end of it, put like a neat coat of self-leveling thinner over it, just so it eats in and then gives a nice smooth finish. And I quite like it with the lacquers, like the LP range and the AK Real Colors.
Very nice. Okay, decal setting solution. What do you use?
And microset and so.
Right. Okay, clear coat. If you had to clear coat, what would you use?
Johnson's Floor Care as the gloss, and then the Vallejo acrylic one for the satin one. So this one.
Yeah, very nice. And weathering materials. Have you got a particular brand or anything you like for weathering?
502 oils. Your wash. To be honest, your wash is more or less 90% of the thing I do. And AK the panel line washers. Those panel lines, those are pretty good.
Very good. Okay, so what was the first kit you built?
Ooh, can't
Properly,
remember.
as you say, moving away from like being like the kid and just, as you say, gluey canopies. What was the first thing you probably thought, I'm going to try and build this and not make a complete hash?
Yeah, the USS Nimitz.
That'd be your
No.
limits. Have you finished it?
Yeah, and actually before Christmas I bought it again just so that I can redo it,
Oh,
because I was actually going to strip it back on the current one I've done about 10 years ago. I've still got it, but I was going to strip it back, but it's a bit beyond repair, and it's just better to. And I saw a pretty good deal for it on Amazon,
yeah.
and then I just bought it just before Christmas. So that is a plan, and I got like a ton of photo etch that I've been buying over the past 4 or 5 years for it. So that is a plan for that.
There you go. Be going along like Stefan's one. Okay, what was the best kit you've ever built? As in, gone to go, not your favourite one, just the best kit you've ever built, and you thought, I tell you what, that just was a great kit to build.
Probably that Tamiya F-16.
It is a good kit, I have to say.
Yeah.
That's it. It's really nice. Before the Tomcat came along, I think Tomcat slightly pips it for me on that front
Yeah, 'cause
now,
I've done
but
that one
before that,
before.
it was always the F-16, so it was really nice. Go on then, Matt.
Yeah.
Same for you. What's the best kit you've ever built?
Jeez. Now you've just put me on the spot.
I like to.
Blimey. Yeah. Ooh, blimey. I'm trying to think back now. Blimey heck. Do you know what? I'm having a blank. I really am. I will think of it, but now you've just chucked me on the spot. I'm having a proper blank.
Throw him under the bus. It's fine.
Fine.
Look. See, look. Pramjit's doing this perfectly. You should be a pro.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm just sat here as the
all right,
audience.
we'll come back. All right, okay. So, what was the worst kit you've ever built?
It's actually over there. It is. Remember when I was telling you that USS Enterprise, the 1-350 ship, the World War II. That is probably the worst kit I've ever built.
Right.
And it's not finished. I've stopped.
I can tell you my worst kit, and it's sat under here, and it's that IL-28 that I was doing the artillery boxing of that old kit for whatever we were doing on a Wednesday night. Oh, it was just terrible, and it's just sat under there, and that's probably where it'll stop for a very long time because it's just, it's terrible. It's not bad.
Weathering everything quite nicely on it, but it's just not a good kit.
Yeah.
It's just fighting. So
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so what's the kit you're most proud of?
The 1-350 USS Wasp. It's on the forum actually as well.
Yeah.
Because it's the same one as your Iwo Jima. It's just a different version of it. It's a different release of it.
Yeah.
That is probably the best one I've done because I've done that over about a year or so. I bought that. I bought that just before around 2014, 2015, because 2015 is the first year I met you.
Yeah.
And then I bought it in 2014 because Hannon's had that, because it's a £180 kit, and Hannon's had it for half price for £90, and then I just bought it. And I remember doing that, and I put lights and everything in there, and I still think and the weathering and everything on it I'm pretty proud of, and I've done all the helicopters and everything, all the aircraft for it as well. And the photo which came out quite nicely. But yeah, that's definitely my proudest build.
Good. Excellent. Right. Okay. So that's you covered. So now about your job. Okay.
Yeah.
So your title is enlighten us of what you do at Airfix.
I'm a product designer at Airfix, and I design plastic model kits.
That's it. That's quite a cool job title, isn't it?
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
That is a pretty good one. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for you on this one. As I say, if you want to pass on any of them, then just pass and we'll move on, all right?
Yeah.
How are the subjects chosen? Do you guys sit down together as a team, and then literally throw ideas in a hat and go from there? Or does it come on from high that somebody above makes a decision and then you lot all get on with it?
So the way it is that we have the designers and stuff like that, and then you have the management, and then the researchers, and then the head of brands. They're the ones who kind of make the final call, but obviously we say, oh, this is a good kit, this is a good subject, scale, stuff like that. The thing is that there is a massive list of literally everything that you want to do over whenever. So you've got a massive list of everything, and then you've got a smaller list of what you're probably going to do in the next couple of years, and then an even smaller list of what your immediate projects are. And then normally, say for example, your immediate project is about to be something that's you're going to start next, but then another manufacturer releases that in a similar scale or another scale or something like that, then that can get pushed back. That makes sense, because obviously there's no point of releasing something if you know someone else is going to do it. That hasn't really happened to me since we've been here, but in terms of like who chooses it, it is more or less like the researchers and the managers and stuff like that. Although they kind of choose what you kind of like as well, because you obviously you want to do something that you like. I mean, like if someone said to you, it's like if someone said to you, build a sci-fi or what, like a sort of kit that you don't like, you kind of need to choose something that you're going to like or going to enjoy, because this project's going to be, you're going to be doing this project for the next, it's like you're doing a massive ship or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to suck life out of you, isn't it? You kind of want to do something that you're interested in as well. So they do take that into account as well, because obviously it's going to be your project. You kind of need to put a good amount of effort into it, and you don't want to get bored and lose the will to live for it about halfway through, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that also is taken into account. That's a lot of people don't probably consider. And it obviously depends on the skill level as well. I mean, like you can't obviously everyone do a 1/24th scale kit, because obviously the budget and everything doesn't call for that, and the skill level, because obviously I'm not at a very high skill level. I'm still learning, even though I've been here for about a year and a half. So obviously you need to choose a subject and a scale and everything like that that kind of meets my sort of level of where I am as a designer. So obviously a lot of people don't really think of that. It's like if someone came new into the hobby, you don't do like what I did, a 1/350 scale ship.
Yeah.
You kind of do. If someone brand new into the hobby, you don't tell them to do a 1/24th scale or a 1/32nd Tamiya kit or something like that, because it's a bit too much for them. You want to do something quite smaller and simple. So obviously, that is taken into account depending on the designer's skill level as well.
Yeah, definitely. So
how many people then work in your department? How many designers are there then that work?
4 designers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 designers, and then obviously there were 3 before I started, and then obviously I'm the 4th one. And obviously there's only a certain amount of projects that 4 designers can do as well. I mean, like, so obviously smaller projects, smaller scale stuff takes a bit more quicker and stuff like that. But then also the other guys are a lot more senior to me as well, so they're a lot more skilled. So projects like for me will take a bit more longer and stuff like that, and probably won't be as refined as it should be. But then you kind of get to a stage where you get to that stage where you do more complex projects and stuff like that.
Which brings on my next question. How many projects in your office are on the go at any one time? Is that like 4 one of you are working on, or do you collaborate between, you know, the designers?
So one person does a project themselves. That's their project. Otherwise, you have it's like too many chefs, if that makes sense. There's no way you're going to be able to get stuff done if multiple people are working on one project. So you work on one project in terms of the design phase. So you don't work on anything else while you're doing that design. But once that design's done and that goes into tooling, then you start a new one. And then once you're in your next project, so like what I'm currently in now, is that you're designing something now and then you have stuff coming in for tooling. So obviously you've got to juggle that around. But in terms of solid design and stuff like that, you do one project at a time because you need to give your 100% attention to that. Because you kind of need to become a mini expert. That's like a quick expert in it, because you need to know the subject matter and everything like that for it to be a successful product.
Got you.
So do you have a time limit then for each project you have? You know, do you get a set?
At the beginning, so my first project was the Tiger tank, and I didn't have a deadline for that and everything, because obviously it would have been a bit unfair to have someone.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like the senior, you know.
Yeah, so they have
the
a
senior
deadline.
designers say.
They kind of know how long a project's going to take. Like, you just know. It's like when you build a model kit, you kind of know this is how long it's going to take. I mean, like, if you were to do a 1/48 scale aircraft, no matter how complicated or anything it is, it depends on whether you throw loads of aftermarket resin pots. You kind of know roughly how long it's going to take, and that when you get to a certain level, you kind of know how long your project's going to take. Even though you might, but you take into account of certain stuff that you might run into as well. You need to have like a bit of contingency plan, a bit of leeway, because you might run into something quite complicated that you won't obviously see at that point. So you do need to take that into account.
So take the 1/24th Hellcat. Okay. How long did that take from, say, start of design to actually coming out as a kit? You know, how long?
It took about 3 years, but that was because it was on a break, isn't it? But I wasn't working for the company then. But I did ask the designer, and he said he spent, I can't remember, I think it was about 9 months designing that.
Okay.
A year, which is a really, really long time. But if anyone knows about like CAD sort of stuff, you kind of know how complicated that kit is. It is ridiculously complicated, like something like I could never do at this stage at my skill level. It's just super complicated, and obviously the attention span to do something like that for 9 months to a year. I mean, like if you think about it, you're doing it like 8 hours a day. It's not like how modeling is, where you kind of the most lengthy periods are the building phase. And then obviously when you paint it, you've got to take a break. You can't do anything while stuff is drying when it's painting. But for designing, you're literally doing it 24/7.
Yeah.
Got you.
Which is
just one thing. The guys are saying the sound's really crackling in the background. You haven't got a loose connection somewhere, anyone? I don't know if you've got one project. Are you using a lav mic or anything?
No, I'm just using my laptop. Do you want me to put headphones in?
No, it's not that. I don't think it's saying echo. They're saying there's a crackle. So it sounded like there was a bad earth or something somewhere in the system. To be honest, it's stopped now. So whatever you did's fixed it. It's gone now. And to be honest, it wasn't happening because we've been on air about half an hour before we actually went live, and it was fine then. But so it may be just to be one of those internet gremlins coming through and everything else. But to be honest, it has stopped now. So everyone else is clear. I know, but it's now stopped. They're saying you haven't got your phone near the mic, have you? Near your laptop?
Yeah.
if you just move it out of the way, sometimes they can interfere with the signal. It's all right, it's only just got to be slightly out of the way. He's gone to the car with it. To be honest, it seems to have gone. I don't know what it was, but I could hear it as well, but it wasn't really bothering me. But they were just saying they could hear it, I think, in there. Okay, so that, to be honest, that's answered a couple of my questions I had down here as well. Okay, so my other quick question is, and I suppose you've answered it already, when you're in the design process, at what point does somebody say, do you know what, forget it? And I take it that could be perhaps if it was just too complicated, and it's, you know, but I suppose really, I'm not being funny, as a seasoned designer, you really know what you're letting yourself in for. But also what, you know, at some point, and we've seen it before, I suppose the point I'm trying to get at is that, you know, say you're working on like the Buccaneer, and then another manufacturer came out of one and said, we're releasing it as well. Would you, at some point, I suppose with the amount of time you've invested into it and obviously what stage of CAD you are, would you shelve the idea and think, do you know what, forget it, it's not worth us doing it. If somebody else is doing it and they're that far ahead, would you pull out? You know, because we've seen, not so much recently, because I say the manufacturers all seem to don't do it as much, but we had a spell, you know, Trumpeter were doing it. They seem to be releasing everything that everybody's working on. So we were like, is it because Trumpeter have got a lot of money and resources to be able to, do you know what, just throw one out as quick as possible to gazumph the poor other company who's been working on it for 2 years to just get it out first? And that was sort of the question to it. Have you been involved with one where you've turned around and said, you know what, forget working on that because such a company's releasing it?
I was about to say there is sort of the Revell Shackleton and the Airfix Shackleton did come out virtually at the same time. So, like I think Phil was saying, was you that far into it you couldn't not do it?
Yeah,
you know what
you've
I mean?
committed.
You've invested that much time and energy into actually designing it that you've got to follow it through, because otherwise you just wasted a load of money, time, effort, whatever to do it.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I don't know too much about the Shackleton story.
Yeah.
But I can imagine, well, a lot of it depends on where you are in the design phase.
Yeah.
So I can't, maybe if, I don't know, maybe like if you're half, I mean, this is just more or less a guess because it's never happened. But if you're more or less finished the design, then I still think it might go ahead, if that makes sense. And 100% it will go through if you're in the tooling, because there's no pulling back from that. Just because someone else has released it, because obviously you've invested in the tooling. There's no pulling back from that, because otherwise that's just a really bad waste of money.
Yeah.
Because obviously you cut into the metal and stuff like that. But maybe in the design phase, I can still see us going through with it, because obviously there's not 100% guarantee that your one's going to be worse than, or ours is going to be better than theirs, or theirs is going to be worse than ours. If that makes sense. You're never going to know that. It comes out. Maybe only company reputation precedes it. I mean, like if obviously Tamiya wouldn't do it, but if we were doing a 1/24 Hellcat and they done a 1/24 scale Hellcat, it might push the scale a bit, because obviously everyone's going to be like, oh, Tamiya doing it must be better, just because of the company reputation. So it probably depends on the company as well. I mean, like, there's a no-brand company that you probably don't really hear a lot about, or that's not as well developed compared to other companies, then you might still go ahead. There's a lot.
So speaking on that, so that's just hypothetical now, right? Let's assume you were coming along with the Hellcat. Okay, you're not quite into tooling, you haven't gone that far ahead, but the CAD work's pretty much there, and you're getting ready to sign it off and get the tooling done. Somebody knocks on the door and says, you do realise Tamiya are about to drop theirs and it's all done. Would you then think, okay, so to try and get some of this, and to be honest, as you said before, you're talking years in, even just from day one of the research, let alone then obviously into design. Would it be then an option you might turn around and say, do you know what then, we'll downscale it and go for 48th? And how easy would that be to do? Because technically the Hellcat's incredibly complex kit, and then you can't just shrink that into a 48 scale. So at that point, would it be a case of, do you know what, I think we're going to have to shelve it and rethink about it at a later date and push on with other projects? Or would it be because we've often said about other companies, like, you know, you often, you know, and I don't know if it's true because I've never spoken to them like this, is that Trumpeter especially tend to upscale and downscale. But when you look at the kit, you're almost thinking, do you know what, it would be perfect in 48th, but for some reason it's 32nd. And that one I always think about is their Swordfish, because the Swordfish in 32nd, it just looks like chunky, and it looks like it's oversized, and it's like they've just upscaled a 48th version and done it like that. So would that be something though you could think, well, maybe we could simplify it and do a 48th version and get around it that way?
To be honest, that could be a possible solution, but if it was me personally, this is all hypothetical speaking, but if it was me, I would probably say wait, because if you spent 9 months designing it, that technically is 9 months of the designer's salary that you have to take into account as well. Because obviously, if you say, "Oh no, we won't do that," that's 9 months of the designer's salary that's gone. If that makes sense. So if it was me, I would probably say we won't tool it, but we'll wait for the Tamiya one to be released and then see where their flaws are or how good it is, and then maybe see what the feedback is on that kit. And then people say, or they preferred or wanted, we can apply that to ours and use that as a selling point. That's what I would do anyway. But
so there you go. So this leads me beautifully onto a question I've just thought of. Do you guys get in other manufacturers' kits, sit around a desk and pull them apart and go, do you know what, they should have done that, that's a really good idea, we could learn from this, or we could
definitely.
You know,
I mean, like, you have to do that. I mean, like, it's quite naive not to do that. If you're bury your head in the sand and thinking you're the only manufacturer out there, it would be quite silly not to go to another manufacturer. It doesn't matter what scale and stuff like that is as well. I mean, like, you can always, for example, if we were doing a 1/48th or 1/72nd scale Spitfire, it will make sense to look at our Spitfires and look at Tamiya 1/32nd Spitfires. And see how they've done it, and another manufacturer of Spitfires, that similar sort of scale and stuff like that. Because obviously you want to see how they've done stuff like that. I mean, like, for example, the Spitfire as well, the 72nd one, Tamiya released the Mark 1 Spitfire and then done that quite unique thing with the tailplane where they all have that in one piece and you insert that in the back. I remember I was thinking about doing something like that for the 72nd one. I've done the project about a year ago, and I remember not doing that for whatever reason, but maybe because it was a scale, was probably material was a bit too thin and stuff like that. But I remember looking at the Tamiya one thinking, oh, how comes they've done that? Is that a good solution? I've never built the kit, but I looked at the design and stuff like that and the instructions. But yeah, you got to look at other manufacturers to understand how they've done it and how they've approached it. And it's quite funny when you start designing a project, you kind of realize why they've done some stuff and why they haven't and stuff. So yeah, it is one of those things.
But on the flip side now, you know, when you get somebody else's kit and you're looking and you know, like, does that take away as you a modeler because you know how things now are designed? Do you, well, I would have done it this way, or that's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're building a kit going, why the hell did they do that? Why didn't they just, you know?
Do you know what's quite funny when you guys do reviews and then you're like, oh, I wonder why they've done this, and I'm kind of like, oh, I know why.
Absolutely. And that's it, because often when I'm looking at them, especially on a sprue, you're looking at some of the parts and you look at the instructions, and I'm literally, even if I don't say it on camera, sometimes like the old grey matter's going thinking, why would you do that? That just seems madness to do it, you know, but they do. Which I suppose is another question I get asked a lot, and I answer it, but yours is probably better than mine. Is it a case where you've got your kit and it's got a part count of, say, 100 parts? Sometimes you get a kit and for some reason you'll get a particular item is in multiple parts when it could be molded in one. Is that part of the part count? Is it a more desirable thing to say it's got 100 parts? So as a designer, are you told what we're looking for is for you to go off, do a Buccaneer, okay, and I want it to have a part count of 200 parts? So do you ever think, well, look, to get to 200 parts, if I broke this up into 4, that would give me 4 parts instead of moulding it perhaps in 2 and stuff like that? Does that happen? Or is part count nothing to do with it whatsoever? It just comes down to tooling issues and to get the most out of a mould and, you know, things like that.
Yeah, we never design aiming for a part count ever. We never do that, because then that's quite Otherwise, like how you were saying before, you'll start splitting up stuff for no apparent reason just to get a part count. You'll never do that. The only reason why I can see manufacturers and why we do it is because of the detail. Because obviously people it's hard to explain, is that we design for a process. We design the model kit for a process. The process isn't designed for the model kit. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so and to be honest, as I say, I've got a slight engineering background as well. So from my point of view, I look at tooling probably different to other people. Sorry, we all need to clap.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I forgot. It's only because the neighbours are going.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tabs. She's probably asleep again.
Thanks, Tabs.
Thanks, Tabs. My partner's a NHS nurse as well. So, yes.
Yeah.
Bless. So, yes, congratulations. It's only because the neighbours are all going, bless them. So,
yes.
Well done to everybody, for the carers as well. Goes for them and everybody who's working very hard to keep us safe. So, definitely.
Cheers.
Right, yeah. So, as I say, getting back on track, the thing with the part count, a lot of people come up to me, especially at shows as well, and they'll say to me, oh God, this part, it's got a part count of 500 and all the rest of it. Like, why? And like, why is it done in this way? And like, from my point of view, getting things in and out of a mold is something I do know about. So to get in and out cleanly and to keep detail, and obviously for the longevity of the mold as well, and things like that, is that I can understand whilst it's done. But a lot of people, I think, they almost think because of especially things like slip molding or slide molding, that now you can almost make a model hull. So it just all comes in, chung, 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 and then releases, and out you come, and all the rest of it. It's like, no, it's not quite as simple as that, because that's a very expensive way of doing it versus, normal sort of flat.
I don't know. I'm quite surprised how the AMK F14 they managed to keep it at that price point with all that really complicated molding, because we try and avoid slide molding as well, because it's super expensive, and the tool longevity isn't as long. So because obviously there's going to be a lot more maintenance, it doesn't last as long. So how they managed to do that at that price point is beyond me. I mean, I was just like quite surprised I managed to do that. It looks amazing and everything, but I mean, like Great Wall Hobby, they do the same thing as well with their missile sets, isn't it? They do it all one piece. It's all slide molded as well, and it's amazing and everything, but it's just quite expensive. And then for us as a manufacturer, as a model kit company, we will do it as separate parts, because obviously it depends. Maybe if it was a 1/24 scale kit, because those ones you would sell less of, so your run cost will be a lot less. So like a 1/24 Hellcat won't be the same run cost as a 1/72 scale Spitfire. 1/72 scale Spitfires obviously sell way more, so you wouldn't try and make that 70 scale Spitfire as simple to do in tooling as possible, just because you don't want to wear out the tool, and obviously it's just going to cause more problems later down the line.
Definitely. So that's the other quick thing with the tooling side of it. A couple of questions there. So we're assuming the CAD fits. So you usually run a 3D print via the CAD, I suppose, is it?
Yeah.
And then because obviously we've seen various models. I remember, wasn't it the first one you did was with the Victor? We saw the 3D render of that one a few years ago. So at the time, everyone was like, "My God, it's rough," and it's like it's a 3D print. It's not real, and everyone's like, "Oh, isn't it? Oh, I'll take it back then." But I have people going to me saying, "Jesus, have you seen it? It looks rough as hell." And I was like, "It's a 3D print. It's not the thing." And obviously we've seen it last year. Obviously at Telford with the Vulcan, that was a 3D print as well. I take it.
Yeah, I think the key thing with that is that we done the Vulcan in grey, whereas the Victor was done in white, so people thought it was because we painted it up, isn't it? Yeah, I was a bit confused by that. From what I heard anyway, because obviously that was before my time as going to Telford and stuff like that, so I wouldn't have known about that. But I think the key thing at the Vulcan one was to do it in grey primer, so you're very clear that it is just a SLA. It's just very clear.
So the thing from that then, how long did it take to print that thing? That would be one question. About 4 months, I assume. But anyway, the thing is so you 3D print it. I take it you probably bung it together just to get a rough idea. So and then it goes off to tooling. So and you guys outsource to a tooling company to make the molds for doing all of that. I take it it's a test shot from them to see, make sure that's good. So it comes back to you to have a look at. My question's always been, if that test shot comes back and it's not right, who's liable? Because
By what? By what?
so that's assume you've come back and you've got your your two halves, you put it together and it's not right, but you're convinced from your point of view that your CAD was perfect and there was nothing wrong with it, but then the tooling company says it wasn't us. Because I'm often intrigued if you've ever had a situation where, because I know of another company who had something like this happen, that they were convinced that their CAD and everything they'd sent off to the tooling company, it was fine, but actually somewhere, and I'm a little bit privy to what happened now to this, but there was a mix-up between the two lots of data going in from one system to the other, and then what happened was that when it came out, it was out by quite a bit. So consequently, they had a bit of a back and forth then between both the companies, like who was at fault. Because and obviously it delayed the kit release, because obviously the tooling company was like, well, look, we've just spent a lot of money making the tooling and all the rest of it to your specifications, and it hasn't been, we weren't given the correct information. And the other lot were saying, well, we gave it in the format you wanted. And there was a little bit of running back and forth, and eventually they did sort it and go. But my point, really getting back on track, is that that's assumed there's a problem with it, with the tooling. At what point do you think that's a tolerance we're acceptable with? And then at what point do you think, well, no, we've got to go back to it and then retool again? Because obviously I know tooling's incredibly expensive, to have it. I don't know what percentage it is for a kit, but, say the engineering side of me's got a rough idea on these things, and it's like, I know it's incredibly expensive, that particular point of the actual build. So it's like, have you ever had, or have you ever known of a situation where, look, the tooling's out, it's wrong, we're going to have to retool and go again?
Not personally, no. And since I've been here, that hasn't happened, and I'm pretty sure that hasn't happened for a while, or from what I know. But if there is a problem, what you need to do, where it comes down as a designer, because you're the one who sends off the CAD data. Yeah. So you're solely responsible for sending that data off. So you need to make sure you're sending the right stuff off. Yeah. First, I mean, like if you send the wrong stuff off by accident, like you send the wrong version, or maybe a previous version where you altered it or haven't finished altering it, that should obviously come down to you. Yeah. But if it is, everything's fine and everything, if there is a problem, what you do, because even though we do get that stuff like that anyway, so when we get our test shots, if something doesn't fit, we check what's wrong with it. So for example, if you've got two fuselage halves going together and there's a pin missing or something like that, you need to investigate what's causing that problem, and then you find out what the problem is, and then you go back to your CAD. Yeah. So let's just say, for example, two fuselage halves are going together and a location pin is too long, so it's pushing out. Something simple like that. Yeah. You'll go back to your CAD and be like, you measure it on the actual plastic model, and compare it to the CAD, and then see which one's right. And if your CAD data is right to the plastic, then obviously you've done it wrong. But if you've done it correctly, and then the pin is actually too long by the toolmaker, then you just put that down in your comments and then send that off to them. Yeah. But that is quite common, but not as in, oh, this is completely unbuildable, like as in like a really bad mistake, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's right. I mean, like there's always the first, I mean, like when I come down, I'll show you first shots, second shots, third shots, and then you can see the progression of how it comes from the first one to the final release. Yeah. And you can see as progresses. But in terms of like it being unbuildable, or there's like a really bad mistake, I haven't really had that. No. And to be honest, I think that will probably be something that won't be dealt with by me. That will probably be dealt with someone a lot more higher up. Yeah. Who has to deal with that. And
so there you go. So that's the next question. I know we've spoken about this off sort of camera before about various things with it. So you've got your test shots. Your test shots you're quite happy with, and that everything's fine, no problem at all. Obviously, then it goes off to manufacturing or injection molding, which is now in India, I do believe.
Yeah, India. Yeah.
So whose or where is the actual molds being made? The tooling. Is that molds
molds are done in China. Right. And then, so the tool is done in China, and then manufacture is done in India. I believe that's the same with Tamiya, I believe, as well. I think they I can't remember. I don't know where they do the tooling. Maybe they do in Japan, but I know they do some of their manufacturing in the Philippines. Yeah. because I done that because if you look at a lot of Tamiya kits, it says made in Philippines, but then I was doing the 1350 Yamato and it says made in Japan, so I'm guessing they do some stuff in Japan as well.
Yeah, a little
And
bit
we
here,
don't
there, everywhere.
so
Yeah.
Victor that you got behind you, that's done in the UK.
Yeah.
That was manufactured in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's done in India now. Nothing's done in the UK for Airfix anyway.
Right, cool. Okay, so next question then, and it's obviously one that gets asked a lot, and I know we've spoken about it as well. The styrene actually used, it does seem to be difference between different kits.
Yeah.
And we do get the odd short shot as well, being honest, because for some reason I'm like a magnet for it, because I had it on my Nat, I've had it on my Phantom, I had it on my 24th scale Typhoon, even had one. But actually your lot were great because they sent me loads of stuff for that, and a few others to say. The Sea Fury, wasn't it, was the other one?
Yeah.
Because obviously, and again, you guys sent me a few halves for the sides of it as well with those types of things. You know, as I say, from a modelling point of view, and I know you guys are great at getting replacements out and all the rest of it, is it something, obviously, you know, how much pressure can you put on these companies to make sure it's done right? You know, that there's no short shots coming through and the various things. Because I've heard from another source that Tamiya have this situation where they weigh the kit in the bag before it gets boxed, and it's done to such a fine point that if there's any short shots, they get kicked and then they're manually inspected for where the short shot is. That's how they do part of their, you know, making sure that it's all pucker and it's all good. And I don't know at what level that's done, if that's done back at packaging or it's done at the factory as it's coming out. But it's one of the things you do tend to find with Airfix kits, with the styrene, since it's moved over to the Indian side of it, or India side of it, and they're doing, you know, that type of injection molding. I've been personally getting quite a few short shots on things, you know. So I'm just wondering if that's something you guys are aware of, and, you know, it's something, you know, with the styrene as well. Sometimes it can be a little bit, shrinks in the mold a bit, shall we say, and things like that. Is there a way of turning around and saying, look, even if it costs from a price point of view to put the price of the kit up, to increase the quality of the plastic being involved with it? So it's not quite as soft and as...
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's actually the quality of the plastic. It's probably the quality control that needs to be improved. I know you might think, oh, because if it's a soft plastic, it causes more shrinkage. Maybe. I'm not too familiar with all that sort of stuff. That's not really my background. It might be the case or it might not. But I think the quality control probably needs to be improved, because we are aware of it. I mean, we know that. I mean, like me personally, I haven't received any short shots, but I've seen plenty of stuff like that around. I mean, like with the Mark 14 Spitfire and stuff like that, that was quite a nice new kit, and then there were a few short shots and stuff like that, quite a few issues that people did post up, and then we are aware of it. And I know some people had it with the Buccaneer as well, the 72nd Buccaneer.
Mine was fine, actually, I have to say. I was all right with that one.
Yeah, mine's okay as well.
Yeah, I think maybe it's the batch. I think the quality control does need to be improved or whatever, but because obviously we don't do the manufacturer, it's quite hard for us to control.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for example, you know what it's like when you're sanding stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because obviously you're not in control of it. Another company is doing it.
Yeah.
So it's hard for you to tell them, because obviously you're just one customer for them, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, like,
which is probably actually something we can talk about. It'd be a nice one to go on to, because as I say, I know we're aware of it because of the industries we're in, but I think it might be interesting for other people to describe how it actually works with the factory, because, you know, you guys don't own your own factory for manufacturing, so you're into a slot which is given. So how is, you know, the current thing we are now with the coronavirus going to affect manufacturing? Because obviously, as we know, your tooling's done in China, your manufacturing's obviously done in India for the injection molding. I don't know about your packaging, where that's done, but are we likely to see some delays, do you think, that you're seeing already, where obviously tooling may have been delayed if you had something in tooling and the factories were shut and so thing? And how are your slots sort of fitting for production runs? Has it been affected by the virus?
Probably everything's been, to be honest, everything in the world's probably been affected by the virus, but I'm probably not the right person to comment on that. I think that if a comment were to be made about the virus situation on timing of products, I think that will be made officially by Airfix, and probably not by me. I'll let someone else higher up.
No, that's fine. No, that's good.
I wouldn't want to comment on something like that, just in case if I say something where it's not true or something like that, because obviously that's a lot of managers higher up deal with that sort of stuff in terms of the delays and all that.
But it's just because I know from a personal experience, I've got a slight production problem because I've lost now my production slot for a range of stuff that I do, and I'm given a slot for a certain amount of time to manufacture for me, and because of the knock-on effect now, I've been pushed to quite a 6 months down out because of what's gone on, because obviously they're manufacturing for a far more important product than I do, so that's it. So I now know I'm probably not going to get a resupply for 6 months. Purely because of where we are with this, because not only have I lost my slot, they're manufacturing something that's going to be used, which obviously we all need, so that's the point to it. So I just didn't know if obviously with you guys as well, with the way the world is and everything else, you know, are we going to be looking at delays?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be affected anyway.
Absolutely.
I think we will be affected. When on how we will be affected, I'm not too sure, but I'm sure we will, because I think that's probably 99% of the world population is going to be affected by that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right, so some more friendly questions. What projects have you been working on? All right, not the ones that you're not allowed to talk about, which we don't know either, before everyone thinks he's been telling us about. He hasn't. He's very good. Even with waterboarding, nipple clamps and everything, he just doesn't talk. But no, what projects have you worked on that obviously you can talk about?
So the first project was the Tiger tank. That was my first one. That took quite a while actually. That was done, so the intention for that was to do a simple version and a complicated version, and that came from the same tooling. So I done a simple version for the Tiger tank, where the tracks and everything are very simple. You try and avoid small parts. And I put that on more, so the way I've called it is a starter kit and a classic kit, just from my own point of view. So the starter one is the very simple one, and the classic one is the more complicated one. And the starter one is just basically for people who, it's kind of, the Tiger tank for the simple one is kind of like, you know, the Wargamer Armor Fast ones. It's very similar to that, where the tracks is more or less in 2 halves. And that's it. But then it's not an easy kit to paint, but it's a very easy kit to put together. Because the intention was for it to be easy to put together, because not many people, just like how I was explaining earlier, is that when I was building kits as a kid, I never actually painted them. And even when you paint them, you're not really too fussed. I mean, like, about what color and everything. I mean, like, people, I mean, like, you've seen how make and paint is at Airfix shows and stuff like that, shows with Airfix, and people paint planes and tanks like pink and red. So for them, it's not really that big of a deal. They're not too bothered. So that was the main point of that. Then next project was the Hawk, Red Arrow's Hawk, and the Spitfire. The Spitfire and Hawk kind of sort of came together because they both had. So I had a brief of coming up with the same stars, Spitfire and Hawk, a very, very simple version. So a very simplified version that goes together really well, similar to the starter tank. And the intention for that was to I got a brief for it to have a stand. And that's where obviously you saw the shadow stand and everything that when it came out. So obviously that was very heavily inspired by what you were doing. Because I remember when I was designing it, I think that's when you finished the F-14 Tomcat. Or about then. And then I got the brief to do a stand for those 2 kits, and I was like, it's got to be a shadow stand, because you kind of do other stands. I mean, you've seen the Revel and Academy stands that came out. I think, not trying to sound big-headed or anything, but I think the way we done the shadow stands and everything like that are pretty good, and I'm quite happy with it. I mean, like, even then, when I come down, I'll show you the different iterations that I had. Must have done about 4 or 5 different ones before we actually landed on that final one. Because originally it was a complete actual shadow, but then if you see it, it's got like that sort of fuselage shape onto the shadow as well. Which is pretty unique as well, because obviously we can do that with injection molding, but you can't do that with laser cut. Because you can get sort of height and sort of feel to it. It's hard to, when you see it in pictures and stuff like that, then you'll notice that it's sort of like a mini aircraft at the bottom.
But you so it's a proper 3D
Yeah,
shadow, if you
but
like.
you got to try. But
Yeah.
I remember doing that. You got to try and avoid making it into a little mini aircraft right at the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You got to have a fine point. But yeah, I think those kits were intended for basically people who just come into the hobby, got back into the hobby, or just for little kids.
Hmm.
But they're actually really good for mojo builders, and I'm not trying to sell it or anything like that, or try and flog it or anything. But I would highly recommend people who need a mojo build that the Hawk and Spitfire. The Hawk is really nice, and the Spitfire is pretty good as well. Because all you have to do, the cockpit is like super simple. All you have to do is paint it in one color, put it together, and then that's it. You can carry on with the rest of it. I'm sure you guys will probably build it sometime in the future or when you review it. But I'm quite happy with them, to be honest, because the intention was, like how you guys say as well, to get kids into the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the way to get kids into the hobbies, do something super simple. Like kids aren't super crazy. They're not too bothered about this panel line or this sort of rivet or this pylon and stuff like that. They just want a plane or something like that. And
Absolutely, yeah.
two classic subjects are Red Arrow's Hawk and a Spitfire. I don't know whether you guys go RIAT as well.
Yeah.
But I remember whenever we were at RIAT last year, it was the first time I went, and whenever the Red Arrows flew past, so many people just coming running in buying those Red Arrows Hawks.
Yeah.
Just because, and the Spitfires and stuff like that. Spitfires and Hawks are a pretty big seller. And
like we say, it's a bread and
like
butter kit. As you say, it's one of those ones where people will always buy them, and like we often say about companies playing safe, do a Spitfire. As you say, things like F-16s and all of those types of things, they're safe aircraft because they're very common. And as you say, they do the air shows and people get inspired. And we did, because a couple of years ago we were there watching the Ukrainian flankers, and we all came away buying flankers before we'd even got out of the car park on our phones. And then when we were with Dax for the Dakotas, like seriously, we're all buying Dakotas before we'd even got out of the car park. Couldn't find one for love nor money, the one I was after. And you be inspired because you see them and it works absolutely fantastic. That's the thing. So in some ways you do, you can't blame companies for manufacturing what's going to sell, Yeah.
Well, can I just come, going back to that, like you say, the iconic aircraft.
Yeah.
How come then they're not a staple in the catalogue permanently? From my point of view, it's like a Mark 1 Spitfire, a Mark 1 Hurricane, a Lancaster, and probably a Red Arrows Hawk would be a staple in like an Airfix catalogue for, so the molds don't get dropped. Do you know what I mean? Like Tamiya tend to just release everything all the time. They don't really drop a lot, do they, Tamiya? You know what I mean? And I'm just thinking, like, on the Airfix ranges, is same with like the Lancaster, probably the Hurricane, like I say, the Hurricane, the Spitfire, and the Hawk would just be staple all the time every year. Like, why do they get dropped? Is there a reason for it? Is it saving molds, or just release schedules, or?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure on that question, honestly. But from what I'm thinking is that I'm guessing is so that you have room for other stuff in the range for future projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think because if you have, say, for example, if you have those 5 stuff, that means you can't release another 5 kits. Like, that's taking up 5 kits of a future release, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you have so many, like say your yearly catalogue, say. So you have so many kits for the 72nd scale that's coming, not new kits, but what's, coming out for that year, say. And same with 48th and what, so forth and so on. You just have a set amount of kits.
Yeah.
Is that the same every year then?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure about that, but I'm guessing that the sales figures probably have a big part into play for that, because I can imagine. That's the only thing I can really think of, to be honest. That sales figures and stuff like that, I don't really get involved in, but I can imagine that plays a huge part in it, because obviously, those sort of stuff probably sell well at the beginning of the year or whenever they're initially released. And so if something's released in December or something like that, it'll probably stay in the catalogue for maybe a year or two until it gets taken away. But probably because I think the thing is, majority of people who buy kits when they're released will buy them in the first year or so, within the first or when it's released in 6 months or so. I think that is probably the peak point of when people actually buy the product. And then after that, it kind of just levels
Well,
off.
yeah.
Makes sense. So I can imagine
Yeah.
if this is just all more or less guesswork, but I can imagine the peak of it being quite high and then it's sort of leveling off. It's really weird the way it goes in reverse.
Yeah, sorry. I'll figure it one day. Trust me, at home it's the right direction. But again, that's always been the question, isn't it? Because I say, like, you know, the Valiant, other kits, you know, to be honest, the Sea Vixen, and, you know, I must admit, we get the Lightnings quite a bit now, but it's always been that thing where it's a fantastic kit, you know, and it's not available. And it's like, why? Where is it? Like the Javelin and things like that. And we often joke about it on here saying, you know, it's their best kit, yet it's not available. Why? Yeah, there's other stuff and you're thinking, you know, so...
Well, again, like you've just said, you know, when it's a new release, we've noticed from my point of view, from obviously like retail side of it, you do get that initial of everybody wants it, and then I say a fortnight to a month.
Yeah.
Fortnight is usually tops. That everybody who wants it, you know, initially will have got it within the first fortnight of it being released, and then like you do get a few trickle sales after that, you know, but obviously there's not that big rush at the beginning. So yeah, I can see the point with that. Yeah, it's just interesting to ask.
Right, so we threw out some questions to the because we were sort of running out of time here. It's flying by.
Yeah.
So there's a few questions from the guys in the forum. Okay, so first up we've got Nathan. You know Nathan, clearly. Modelers have often favoured part of building a model, painting and weathering, etc. What is your favourite part of the design process?
Design process.
Finishing
Design
it
process, as a modeler or as a designer?
as a designer.
As a designer, I think he means, yeah. The end.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, the end when you've signed it off.
Yeah, the sign off bit.
I'll probably say sometimes it's quite nice to design, as in like what do I prefer, as designing the kit or building a kit? Is that what it kind of means?
I don't know. I think he means like, is there any part of the design process which actually you really like? Is it? I just say I don't know what Nathan's actually his question is directly, but I would assume is it, you know, the first stage of it, just laying it out, or is it adding the detail into the kit, or is there actually a particular part of the design process? So obviously your, you know, job, you really think, you know, you've turned the corner a bit, you know, you're in the homeward stretch. Is it literally when you signed it off and think, job well done, I'm happy with that? You know, which bit of the actual design
or the
process?
research at the beginning?
To be honest, I will explain it from a design point of view. So the way it's kind of interesting when you start a new project, because you're kind of looking forward to a new project, because you've been doing the previous project for so long and it's kind of like zapped the life out of you. So you're kind of looking forward to doing a new project. So obviously before that you do all your research, go look at books, go to museums, understand the subject, understand what you want, what requirements are for it. So that sort of stage is kind of interesting as well. Then the beginning phase of how you want to break, because before you actually design it, you need to know how you're going to break it up and stuff like that before you've actually designed it, which is, so you've got to think about it in your head before you've actually got it on your screen, which is very, very tricky, because I know it's very hard to explain, but there's a lot of brain power required when you design, because you need to know roughly how you want to do it, and then sort of what method of what you want to do. I'll probably say that bit is quite interesting, and then you start breaking up the parts and then turning them into proper parts, as in solidifying the components, and then start adding the details. So it depends on how different designers have different approaches. Sometimes they might split all the parts up how they want it and then detail it up, or they can split the parts up and then detail it up as they go along. The only problem with that is if you do need to change something, all that detailing work that you've done kind of goes to waste. Makes sense. But then another part.
Sorry, Project. I've got a question just before it goes out of my head, right? And this is to do with accuracy. Now, I'm not going to pick in on you or Airfix in general, because actually I think your kits now are really very accurate. But do you think now, you know, with CAD and computer design and information out there, do you think there's now not much of an excuse for not getting something in the right sort of scale or the right accuracy? Do you think that's now a lame excuse, because really the information is there for people to be able to research it and do it? And I'm talking other manufacturers here, if you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I would say 100%. the CAD software isn't a replacement for the human brain. You need to know what you're doing. You need to make sure your measurements are right. You need to make sure everything's right. You need to double check everything. The CAD software isn't a replacement for. It's not like artificial intelligence, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
You're solely responsible to get these shapes right, to understand how the parts break up, and then if things are clashing, and that has to come down to the designer, no doubt about that. I wouldn't say that's the software or anything like that. That comes down to the designer and how meticulous your process is, because the way we do it, the way our company works is that all of the designers sit together more or less, so we kind of bounce ideas off each other, or just get people to check stuff, because when you're doing something for so long, you become blind at what you're looking at.
Yes.
You do need people to come and have a look and just double check something, because you might spend like 3 hours doing something. I've had this before. I spent like hours doing something, and I'm like, oh, why isn't this working? I'll show someone else, and they'll fix it in like 30 seconds, just because you've been looking at it for so long. But I would 100% say it's not the software or anything like that. Yeah, it's accurate and everything. I mean, like it's like a ruler basically. If you're reading the ruler wrong, you can't really bring a ruler.
Yeah.
So
my other question then, quick one. So let's assume you're working on, I don't know, say like the Buccaneer, only because I've got it in front of me. Yeah. So how much of it do you depend on the drawings? Because I assume you probably go off and research and get the drawings for it, the original. And then how much goes, because Airfix made a big thing about using LiDAR, about various for line scanning and everything. How much of it is like you looking at the plans of it, and how much is taken from a real aircraft? Is it just it's a hybrid between both, or do you literally turn around and say, do you know what, we've just looked at XT370, we're going to build XT370, and as we know, somewhat the older aircraft especially, they were handmade. These were tinsmiths knocking panels individually, so they might not be the same. It's not like a Eurofighter and it's being 3D printed off and done. So certain things might be different. And we were speaking about this, Matt, weren't we, about another aircraft a few weeks ago, of how each aircraft's different because they were all handmade. So, and a lot of people say your aircraft's not very accurate. It's like, well, it's not, because they were handmade back in the day. But really, how much of it do you take from blueprints, and obviously probably 3D renders and scans, and up against your own LiDAR type stuff?
So there's probably two or three main ways that we design or start the foundation of a kit, and that is scan data and drawings. So stuff like Spitfire and everything is like, there's a crap load of drawings, so you kind of know. We've done loads of Spitfires, so we have all the data for it. We're happy with the shape and accuracy. So you'll have the drawings and everything, and if you look at the drawings, they'll give all the coordinates for all the ribs and everything. So you have that information, and then you just sort of scale that down. So for example, I'm just going to take a guess. Say there's like a 10 or like 30 ribs in a wing for a Spitfire. You'll do like 10 or something like that, and then plot the points out, and then you sort of use like an offset table. And you pick the points out, and then you say you're doing one rib on a wing for a Spitfire. You'll do all the points of it, and then you'll join it all up, and then you'll do that across all the wing, all the ribs, and then you'll be happy, and then you make the surface and everything, and you'll be happy with that shape and everything because it's accurate. Because obviously you're following the actual real aircraft, the dimensions and everything of it, so you can't really go wrong unless you've read it wrong or you've done something wrong. And another way is to do scan data, and scan data is where you have the actual, it's like a STL file. It's a massive file. It's very big in terms of like size, and it slows down your computer, but it's very accurate. And then you use that as a foundation to build your model. And those are probably the two main ways to do it. But the thing is, you can't rely on one source. You've got to have multiple sources. So you've got to look at photos. You've got to make sure your photos, you've got to have a look at the right version. You've got to reference so many stuff. I mean, like if you're doing, let's just say, for example, this wheel on a Spitfire, you got to know what version you're doing, because you know there's so many marks of the Spitfire. So you got to know what version you're doing. You got to make sure you're doing the right one, and you got to cross-reference it from photos to other information to drawings, because there's loads of drawings for Spitfires. There's loads of museums and photos for Spitfires. For scan data, I'm not too sure, but you can't use one source, if that makes sense. You got to cross-reference it. You can't just rely on one thing because you're relying on one thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. So then does that influence what Airfix are going to release then? Because obviously if you've got source material, obviously to go off to design it, you know what I mean? So
yeah. So there are some times where we just can't do something. So maybe a particular version of an aircraft or something like that. Say if you want to get 3 releases out of a kit, and you can only do 2 because the 3rd release you don't have information for this certain additional parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're only because you can't just go making stuff up.
No, that's right.
In this hobby.
yeah. You soon be called out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like that is a big part as well. I mean, like for whatever subject you're doing, you got to have the information to do it. If you haven't got the information to do it, there's no point of doing it. If you're going to do it half-heartedly or whatever. But yeah, that is a big point as well. I mean, like I know a lot of people do say, "Oh, why don't you do this subject? Why don't you do that?" We could probably do it, maybe, but obviously it depends if the information is out there.
Yeah.
No, totally, definitely.
Perfect sense.
Yeah. So James basically says, what model inspired you to take up model design?
Model design, to be honest, I didn't have, because obviously my background is an industrial designer. I've done a degree in industrial design and technology. If people don't know that, it's very similar to product design. There's industrial design and technology and product design. Product design is BSc, which is a bit more maths-based. Industrial design is BA, which is a bit more practical-based, which is what I like. I like more hands-on stuff, and then that's what I did. And then I think like majority of the modules are the same. There's only like 1 or 2 we have more or less the same lectures and stuff like that. But I was in my second year at uni. I studied at Brunel University, and my second year we started learning CAD, and I used SolidWorks, which is quite a common software. And from then on, I was like, oh, this is pretty good software. Like I enjoy it, so that's sort of the thing. And I was obviously into model making, and those 2 sort of things went hand in hand, because obviously you use CAD to design a model kit, and I'm a model maker, so I was like, oh, that was
ideal. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, so Steve's basically saying here, how much scope is there for making alterations to the initial prototypes comes back, which is something we've obviously covered before with test fitting not going wrong, or not being right and all the rest of it. But I think we sort of, covered that really, didn't we, in the conversation?
By prototyping, he means SLA prototype. So when we do SLA prototype, for example, I'll show you an example is a Tiger tank. So obviously I have a simple track and a complicated track, because obviously you've got 2 types of tracks. You do one side simple track, one side complicated track, just so you don't have 2 of the same thing for no reason. And another thing as well is that for example, if you have something that you can't figure out in your head, if something's going to go together, for example, something on a wing, let's just say that, because it's obviously 2 points of the wing. Maybe you've got 2 different ways of how you want it to go together, but you don't know which way is the best. What we normally do is do one method on one side, and the second method on the other side. And then once you get the prototype, you kind of know which one's going to work. Or maybe they don't work, and you have to do a completely new idea, or they become a hybrid of each other or something like that. That is a common thing as well, because a lot of the prototypes when it's a prototype, you are still testing some stuff as well of how it's go together, and that is also a big thing as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the Hellcat prototype, so this is way back, I think the Hellcat prototype was all done in one wing, I think. I'm not 100% sure. So know how there's 2 separate wings for one wing folding and one wing out? I think it was actually going to be one wing, so you have one wing to choose open and wings down or wings open. But the designer, I think the designer was saying it was way too complicated and there were too many compromises, so it was better to give 2 separate parts. So that's another thing as well, where that prototype comes in handy as well.
Fair enough. Mark says, have Airfix considered photo etch parts to come in with where their existing plastic technology cannot deliver the level of detail? Ever thought about saying to them, look, we need photo etch in this?
Nah, not something that we'll probably ever do. Just because it's obviously we don't manufacture it. I think people like Tam and Edward, they obviously manufacture their own photo etch, so things are a lot more easier for them. Although we do get aftermarket people asking for their kits and stuff like that for test shots, so sometimes we do send them test shots so they can make their own photo etch or aftermarket parts. But I don't think it's going to be something that we do, because obviously it will be something that we'll have to outsource, and then that adds another process.
Yeah.
To the packing, to adds more steps for the logistical stage, shall we say?
Yeah. Got you.
Or something that will.
I suppose you'll put the price up as well, and I suppose
it's all going to be done to a price point, as we know. Yeah. Saying here, Chris saying, do you know when the? Well, I was just going to say, I think this is all going to go out the window for the release date for the 48 scale Sea Vixen. I think as we're filming this on the 2nd of April, it could be any time between now and 2025.
It's something I'm not really a part of or work with.
That's all right.
Sure. And I can't imagine with obviously the state of the world, whether it's going to be out very soon.
Got you. Okay, Jim says the new Buccaneer is very good. I have to agree. And it's has demonstrated that Airfix can successfully mould, there you go, the middle and rear sections with extremely good fits. Using this method, would Airfix consider going back to the Matchbox Hella tradition of doing several versions of a subject not necessarily in the same box, therefore maximising the use of the moulds? For example, like with the Hunter, obviously he means doing the single seat and the 2 seat, and with an F104 doing the single seat and 2 seats. The Wessex doing the turbine engine with the piston front on it, and the Whirlwind with the turbine and piston type things as well. Do you think that would be an option? Because Airfix traditionally did do it back in the day in some of the earlier kits, wouldn't it? Like the Harrier, you could take a saw to it and cut the front of the 24th scale one off and turn it into an FA2. The FRS, wasn't it? And the GR3.
Well, again, is that just Pranjit, for your thing? Is that again, like when you get a brief, do you know to get the maximum amount of mould life? So, because obviously they have got a lifespan, haven't they? And you're going, well, if we do this subject, we can get this version, this version, this version, and we can get because I know a lot of other manufacturers do it for a start. Well, we can get a few versions out of, say, one lot of moulds if we just put an extra sprue in or change it up a bit. Do you know what I mean? Is that as part of your brief as well?
So before we actually even design or anything like that, before you actually go ahead with the design, you know what versions you're doing. So obviously that is a big step. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated, so try not to do it for maybe the larger kits, just because you need to. When I mean you've got so many different versions, it does mess with your head with a bit, because you need to figure out how things are going to go together, and there's always a compromise when you do different versions for whatever reason. I mean, with the Hunter, there's 2 versions of the Hunter that have been released. You guys done the first release, but the second release you've got to cut out a wing and stuff like that. That's obviously a compromise, because in an ideal situation you would have a completely new different wing, but that would just be super expensive for the tooling. So what we've done is we're cut out for it, and obviously that is a compromise in some part, because people who might like that version of the kit other than the other versions of the kit might say, oh, I wanted this bit as a full wing rather than having to cut bits off and stuff like that. But in terms of versions and stuff like that, we definitely do take that into consideration before we start it, but we try not to overly rely on it, because the majority of the sales and everything, as you probably know as a retailer, is made from the first release of the kit, whether it's a different whether it's that version or a different version. Normally the first release of that kit is the one that sells you the most. As I think you guys said, shared the Hunter and Buccaneer were your biggest sellers, and those are pieces. I mean, the first ones are always the biggest ones, so you try and not compromise as much on the first one.
Sorry, mate. But also, the first version that gets released, say I'm going to take the Buccaneer. Is not the most popular version.
It's got the wrong Bombay.
Yeah, I've heard this before. That's all I'm asking. Is like,
Yeah, no, we've had that
from other people. You kind of get the least popular version first, and then it sort of staggers to like.
Let's face it, I'll tell you the classic for it. I'll name and shame. Kitty Hawk always released the worst version first. And I always say it, so they sell a load of them because people just buy it because it's like a Jaguar, for instance. They did like the French version, and then obviously the RAF one came out afterwards. And it's a bit like a lot of their versions they release isn't the most desirable kit. And then afterwards they do it. So I always say it so they get 2 lots of sales, because you get people who buy it because it's an aircraft kit release, then they'll buy the one they want.
Yeah, to be honest, that's more of a marketing thing about how they do their strategy and stuff like that. So I'm not really too involved with that sort of side. But yeah, normally the first release is the one where you sell the most or make. That's the one where everyone buys. I mean, like as we were saying before, everyone just buys the kit within the first a couple of weeks or month or so, and after that it just tails off. So that is probably the thing, but. Yeah, it is one of those, and obviously when we do have different versions of the kit, we don't say we're doing more versions of the kit because that will compromise sales.
Yeah, which is fair enough. But I think what he's getting at, like with the Hunter, I know it's not as straightforward because there's usually, it's not just a case of chopping the front off and putting a 2-seat on. There'll be other differences on the model. But I think that's what he means is, would there be a possibility of when you're designing thinking, do you know what, we could just have a separate front end. So we could add a 2-seater and various things to the kits. And I think what it means is because Airfix and you guys are getting so good now, and this does prove it, because, you know, you've got the back end, you've got the front end and the midsection. And, you know, I've done a little bit of work, but nothing particularly massively on this to make it seamless as a fit job. So would it have been a thing as well to think about maybe you could, with other kits, just to get more... You know, because you're going to use central section to be the same, but maybe the back end of something on a Hunter with him. I think that's what he's really getting at.
Yeah, because obviously we know as some other manufacturers made modular kits and they're awful to go together. Let's be honest, the fit's not brilliant. Where, like you say, with that thing, it is because of the design of the aircraft in real life. It is quite modular how you've done it, and it does go together. It's pretty flawless, to be honest.
It does go together extremely well. Yeah,
a sanding stick, and it's fine. Do you know what I mean? So. Is it something you could would consider doing? Because you've obviously got the skill set there to actually pull it off. I think is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, it is definitely one of those things, but it's whether how much it compromises. It a lot of it is depending on the subject and stuff like that. I think because obviously if you're compromising so much on it just so that you can knock out a few versions of it, sometimes it's not worth it. If that makes sense, you rather do one thing really nicely rather than releasing 3 things that are okay.
Because I think the other classic example, talking, you know, other companies, is that Tamir's F-16, the 48th one, comes with a separate front. Because, as we may know-ish, that they did do the 2-seat front for it, but never released it. So again, it was like, well, why do it if you're not going to release it? Why don't you just mould it in one, like, you know, Haskell did and all the rest of it in some cases? So it's like, you know, it seems funny where some manufacturers do it and then don't go with the idea and they hold it back. As I said, it's probably more marketing to doing than it is design, because I'm sure the designers over at Tamiya did do the 2-seat front for it and all the rest of it, but for whatever reason it never got picked up on, you know.
Yeah, I was doing the Yamato and I was thinking about that as well, because obviously the Yamato, the neutral one, which is the quite expensive one, the flagship, it's got like over 1,500 parts and stuff like that in there, and it got released I think about maybe 5 to 10 years ago, and and I was doing drilling out holes and stuff like that, and they've marked out holes for Y and M. So obviously the Yamato and the Musashi, but the Musashi hasn't released yet.
They've never done it. I know.
I'm guessing it's going to be released soon, but whether they release it or why they haven't released it, I have no idea. Maybe it's just a money or marketing thing. That's the only thing I can think of.
It is. Right, okay, we'll just whip through some of these. So Robert says, have you ever walked on the wild side and just did a custom paint job on an aircraft? Something unexpected, bold and original. My thought was when you seem to be constrained by box art. Have you ever done anything really wacky?
As a designer or as a modeler?
I think as a modeler, I think he's thinking more of.
I'm thinking I want to do a pink Spitfire. I bought the pink paints for it at Telford, and I just want to do a pink Spitfire and stuff
There
like
you go.
Yeah, that counts.
Just for doing a pink Spitfire. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
So
but-
Peter's asked the question everybody wants to know: are you currently working on a 1/48 scale Buccaneer?
I'll pass it on to the powers that be.
Good
Because
answer.
let's face it, it's a bit like us with a Wessex, and you know you're going to be working on one because I've told you to. So
Oh, yeah.
but,
That was quite funny.
you
You
could
guys still
upscale
come
that.
up-
It's good enough detail.
We were convinced, Pranjit. We were proper convinced it was going to be a Wessex.
No, I was loving it as well because I was like thinking, oh, these guys are going to be so surprised.
yeah, so disappointed.
It was the reasoning behind it as well because you laid out all the Airfix kits, and then you were looking at all the aircraft that was in
Yeah,
the box.
we did our own work on this. We went through all the kits, and all the naval ones have got a Wessex in it. And you look at all of your other ones, and if there's 2 aircraft in, it's in your range. It's the only one. So in
I think
5
it
years,
was
when you do
Nathan.
release it,
I think it was Nathan who picked up on it, if I
Yeah.
remember right there, to begin with. And then it was like, oh yeah, well, let's have a look at the box. I was in the shop looking at the box top, and oh look, because it was the Phantom. The Phantom we all built's got a Wessex in the background, obviously.
Yeah.
And so is the Buccaneer, and it was like, and then we're looking at other box tops. Well, they've released that, and that's come out. So yeah, that was put 2 and 2 together and get 10.
yeah,
kind
that's
of
typical of
scenario,
us.
isn't it?
Far too much time on our hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay, so Tim says, hi Pramjet, I was a couple of questions from a design process. What 3D software do you use for design, and were you proficient at it before you joined Airfix?
So software we use is Creo Parametric.
It's easy for you to say.
Can you send it
So
to
I'll-
Andy for the 3D printer?
I had a background in CAD and everything, so that's kind of how I got the job.
Mhm.
But in terms, from a designer point of view, the CAD that we do is extremely difficult because a lot of people are used to solid modeling, but what we do is surface modeling, which is the more free-flowing organic stuff, which is very difficult to do. It's just the intricate work that goes into it, and trying to get everything right is very difficult, and it's quite hard for people to explain who haven't been in the industry. But if you think about it, we've got 4 designers. I believe we're the only UK company that do this, and so technically that's 4 people who do this job in the country out of like 70 million people. So it's a very highly specified or niche job, if that makes sense, because there's only 4 people who do this sort of thing, because you're designing it for injection molding and stuff like that, and the accuracy that we have to get it to is quite complicated and everything. But in terms of like how proficient I was, I'm still learning even today. I mean, like, I'm a year and a half and I'm still got so much more to learn, just because there's just a lot to learn and a lot to go by. What were the other questions on the 3D scan?
Yeah, on the 3D scan data, often shown on Airfix's workbench, do you use it as the basis for your models or just take measurements from?
Yeah, so similar to what we were talking about before, we just use it for the basic shapes because you can get the cross section and stuff like that across. So for example, the fuselage of an aircraft, you would break it up from the scan data, and then do the cross curves and then build it up like that. The part where it gets a bit difficult is when you got like stuff like wheel wells or bomb bays and stuff like that where the doors are open, because obviously you've got no scan data for where the part is open.
Yeah.
So you try and figure that out, and it's not like as simple you can just close the door on the scan data.
No,
it doesn't work like that. So you need to try and figure it out. And
so this is a part 2 of that bit of the question. With the 3D scan data, which you're using, it's highly detailed. Does it show dents, scratches and stuff like that into it, and do you have to take account for that?
Don't take dents and scratches into account of as in we don't model it, if that makes sense. But we do. The thing is, it's a bit of an art. You got to try and understand what you're seeing, understand these shapes and stuff like that, and know what you're looking at. You got to make sure you're not designing something that's something from the scan data, as in like so like clear parts is quite common, because obviously it's quite hard to scan a clear part because obviously it's clear. So like stuff like canopies, that bit's quite difficult because a lot of information is missing on that, and you've got to try and understand the shape of it with a bit of mishmash information and stuff like that. So that bit is quite tricky and stuff like that.
Right. Great job. Okay, David says is a little bit over this. A lot of this we've covered already, but he's saying, could you please discuss to us the general outline of how Airfix works with military aircraft manufacturers during the model kit development process? For example, what steps are involved to get the agreements, I suppose, to allow Airfix to examine an aircraft in precise detail? Do you need special security clearance or sign NDA agreements? What restrictions do you have to be placed when Airfix examining their aircraft? Well, I suppose you don't deal with modern stuff though so much, do you?
Yeah, because that's the thing, we don't deal with modern stuff.
No.
So like stuff like F-35, F-16, stuff that are in service, we don't really deal with. So a lot of stuff we do is World War II, Cold War era, some stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite simple to do stuff like that because obviously it's not secret information and stuff like that. But if you're doing like an F-35, I can imagine it being, we've never obviously tried to do anything like that, but other manufacturers have, and I can imagine it being quite difficult for them because I can't imagine you knocking up on the Department of Defense's door and being like, yeah, can we go scan F-35 because we want to do it as a plastic model kit, and then you can end up being like a spy for another country or something like that. That would be quite a common thing. I mean, I've never been in that situation where we've had to do that. But I can imagine it being very tricky and difficult, and you probably got to know the right people.
I know that one well. Yeah.
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 I mean, like NDAs, I'm pretty sure you've got to sign if you were doing something like that. I mean, even older stuff like F-15 and F-16s, even though they've been around for a while, and I can imagine they can't be easy to access.
No. I know from a personal point of view, we often have the members and they say about, can we do like the base visits and stuff? But one, you need to know somebody's on the inside. But I've been very, very lucky to get up to close, very, very modern stuff. But I've had to have background checks. I've had to sign NDA type things and secrecy things and all these different things. And that's just for me just to have a look at. And I've been in a situation where I've been never allowed to take a camera in or even your phone. So your phone and your camera get locked with security and they pat you down and everything before you're allowed in there as well, purely because they don't want you recording anything or talking about it as well. So, and that's just for me as a geek to have a look around something. So, that's
another limitation for when you choose a subject as well. I mean, I'm sure that's like that for other manufacturers as well. If you want to go do something as modern as that, it's probably going to be quite difficult to access something like that, and that probably has a massive influence. Because if you go send an email out or however you contact the people that you need to go see this thing, I'm sure they're not going to get back get back to you straight away. It's probably going to be over a few weeks or a few months. Yeah. So they probably, whoever manufacturing said aircraft, probably needs to...
It must be there, because obviously a lot of manufacturers, I don't think I've seen it on yours, but it has like officially licensed product. And I often think, how much involvement has the company done apart from just saying and taking a nice chunk thank you for the money? Have they actually given them any information on the aircraft, or have they literally just gone through for an aircraft like the Jane's books and got the data from there? Because that's usually the only stuff that's publicly available and probably the most accurate to be able to do it. But again, I think that's one thing with Airfix, you tend to steer for the more Cold War stuff, and you've got nice contacts with museums and can go and have a crawl over them after the public's been kicked out. So okay, so David says, how are the 3D computer files made? Does Airfix perform 3D laser scans of aircraft? Which you do.
We do 3D laser scans, but we don't do it as a company. This is all done by another company who specialize in 3D scanning. Yeah. So they do it all, and then they pass on the information and everything to us. But I think most of that we've kind of covered now anyway. So, yeah.
Right, Chris says, what factors influence the choice of subject for a kit? At what point do you make the decision which ones will be released? Well, again, we sort of covered that a little bit, isn't it? Yeah. So, all the best with your work on the Spitfire. When you are finished, can we start on the one? Okay, will Airfix ever release the JU-87B in 1/24 scale?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I'll pass that on.
Pass them on. Yes.
I'll pass that on. anyone has got some like recommendations for stuff as well, just give it a shout and I can pass it on.
Yeah.
Well, no, serious. If anyone's on live chat or wherever, just give a shout.
Yeah, that's it. You see, look, you'll be going in like it'll be a pile of box of paper like this, like a petition. We have a petition from Flory Models for 2,500 members. Want a 48 scale Buccaneer.
Well, yeah, but like we've just said though, if they work off, there's got to be the aircraft around for you to work off. It can narrow it down a bit. Do you know what I mean? That you can get access to and get proper plans.
Yeah.
So you got just something really obscure. It's like, you know what I mean? Because it's not around anymore, or there's no examples that are in museums and stuff. Then, yeah.
Right. Scott says, "Hi there. Was there any subject not made by Airfix that you would love to bring out in the future?" And obviously, if finances weren't a concern or anything else. So go on then. From you personally, if you could, they said to you, right, okay, you can build anything you like, go for it. What would it be?
Probably have to be a ship, because I like ships. Probably be the Queen Elizabeth class carrier. I quite like that.
Aren't you lot working on that already?
So that was a suggestion thing, isn't it? So that was at Telford last year, isn't it? So that was actually, if no one knows about it, it was a scratch build, 1/350 scale Queen Elizabeth class carrier, and the reason why it was done is just to see the reception of it at Telford and see how much interest there was on it. It was pretty good interest and everything, which is good.
Well, think about it. You'll get good longevity out of the kit, won't you? Because it's been serviced for probably 100 years. So if plastic modelling's still a thing in 100 years, you'll still be able to get some money out of that mould.
But because I like doing my ships and stuff like that, so I'll probably say, yeah, that would probably be number one for me.
There you go. Cool.
Or maybe that or the new Gerald Ford class carrier.
Yeah, the biggies. Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice. So the other one here is, how about a new 1/72 Concorde? Again, I discussed this on. I was saying actually, if Tamiya was to do it, I reckon they'd do really well with it, because again, it's such an iconic aircraft, and even though it hasn't flown for donkey's years now, it has that presence to it, you know. So it's a bit. I think it's just a great aircraft. I'm a big Concorde fan anyway, but I was saying it'd be nice to get a new nice one done somewhere. So there you go. Take that back with them. There you go. New Buccaneer or a Gannet. We were discussing this because Andy's obviously working on a Gannet at the moment. But again, iconic aircraft. The Gannet be a nice one for Airfix to do. To go along with the Wessex.
Is that 148 scale as well?
Well, he's saying 148, but even if you did it in 72nd, because then it would go nice with your other collection of aircraft with your Wessex that you're doing 72nd. So that way I've got my carrier wing. Between us and all the Phantoms and that up at Doncaster, we've almost got enough for a carrier. Okay, any chance of a Western Whirlwind? There you go. Okay. Be all the helicopters now, look. Okay, Jim says, I really like the look of some of the new releases. Looking forward to building the 148 scale Tiger Moth, which got released a couple of weeks ago, which we saw, didn't we, at Bolton? You had it at Bolton, didn't it?
We've got some in stock.
I've got them in stock.
We've got today, they arrived.
They've arrived today. Some of us put a lot of work, maybe too much, into things like the cockpit detail, only to cover it all up in the end. Do you think Airfix would be interested in releasing a 148 scale or 132nd cutaway versions? Well, Airfix doesn't do 132nd, and we've discussed this broadly before. So
it is something that seems to be picking up quite recently, isn't it? People are doing cutaway versions. So like the Lancaster, is it the Wing Not Wings one?
Yeah,
they're going to do the
just the cockpit area. Yeah.
Even me personally, I think that would be pretty cool for me to buy personally. I think that would be quite nice instead of buying the whole massive thing. I mean, like, I can't really be bothered to go do that whole thing. Yeah. But if you're thinking about super detailing a cockpit and stuff like that, it seems to be picking up recently. Like a lot of people are quite interested in it because a lot of people don't want to be building an entire aircraft for some reason or something like that in terms of big scale.
Again, like we were saying, with a 32nd Lancaster, it's totally impractical because most people, unless you're going to hang it on the wall, where you're going to put it, because it's going to be a dust magnet anywhere else. And the great thing is that cockpit section's about the same size as a bus, so it'll look nice, and you can do all the different versions if you wanted to. you know, and
Yeah.
you've got all the detail and all the bits that are just in that one section. So again, it is, if you wanted to be in that scale, and obviously from Airfix's point of view, you could do a 24th scale version.
I'm just thinking that 24 front end of a Lank,
or just the front end of a Dakota or something else like that. All I can actually, there you go, do a Halifax, because that's
or a Vulcan,
or a Vulcan.
A Vulcan.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people wanted the Hellcat engine as a separate thing.
Yeah.
Well,
That was pretty cool.
Front end of Canberra or something. I don't know. There'd be plenty, wouldn't there?
Yeah, it's plenty. Yeah, you wouldn't have to go around doing too many of them then. Okay, so next up we've got, we are just about out of time, guys. John says, I've only ever built 1/32nd scale aircraft kits, therefore I've never built an Airfix kit. Why won't Airfix entertain doing 1/32nd scale?
To be honest, that is actually a pretty good question, but I think we've always focused on 1/24th as the really big, super scale sort of stuff, and then 1/48th as a sort of all-rounder, and then the 1/48th and 1/72nd as the all-rounder one. So yeah, I can't see us doing 1/32nd probably, just because it's a bit of not an odd scale, but a scale that's well covered probably by other manufacturers.
Yeah.
And as you guys are saying it now as well, 1/32nd is kind of dying out.
We've definitely seen a drop in sales.
Dropped off, isn't it? As you say, Trumpeter were prolific a couple of years ago. Everything was in 32nd, wasn't it? And now there's nothing. So there you go. There's a good one for you.
Well,
look, can we get him on more often? He's very interesting. That's it. You see, that's probably your comment of the evening. Okay, Matt says, I'm a member of a replica Westland Whirlwind fighter bomber. We have almost complete CAD, now based on the original drawings and manufacturer is currently underway down at airframe assemblies. Would Airfix be interested in the CAD? We'd love to see an updated kit. There you go. Look, free CAD.
I'll let my bosses know.
There you go. He'll pass it on. Some old British civil planes like the Viscount add new tooling on one he's already done.
What was the question? Some of the old British.
See, the Viscount would go onto the thingy, wouldn't it?
It's a Vickers, isn't it? I thought it was a Wellington, wasn't it? Wasn't it based on a Wellington, was it? No, that was what was the other one, based on a Wellington, the civil version. Was it a Viscount? I don't know. No, I don't think it was now. Ooh, I bet people are shouting at the screen now, Panjit, because that's what I'm. It's one of them, you should know that.
Give it 30 seconds and it'll appear up in live chat.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard says a Westland Whirlwind helicopter would be perfect. Look, you got quite a lot for Whirlwinds. Who knew?
Yeah.
Okay, last question for tonight then, guys, and we'll let this kind man go to bed. Is there any chance of get a decent pilot in kits? The plans to display them more alive.
We actually spent quite a bit of time and effort on, I think it was the Mosquito or Typhoon, I can't remember. I think it was both of them or one of them, I can't remember, but they just, like, whenever you go to shows and everything, no one really, because you guys know modeling a figure pilot isn't simple or anything like that. It's quite complicated.
No, we know it well. Yes.
Yeah. So like the amount of money you got to spend on it, and if you go to like all these shows and you see 10 Typhoons built up, and you don't see any of them with a pilot, and if you do see them with a pilot, it's an aftermarket resin one. So what's the point of spending the money on doing it?
I think that's it. I think there's limits as well. I think to injection molding to actually produce a figure. Does that, you know what I mean? For compared to resin, if you're going to put both together, you know, for just the sharpness of the mold, I think for sort of facial features, I think more than anything, rather than clothing. But you know, but like I say, it's a bit of an art form just painting a figure on its own. Never mind, like building the kit as well. So
we do have to mention this is obviously Pramjit's Hellcat, which very kindly, if you didn't know, as he was working on this particular project, he was uploading the pictures after approval, of course. I didn't design it, I just built it. When you were building it, but he did do a full build thread of it. So if anybody's interested, literally, very kind of him, he went through the motions of doing a full build thread for it. Shortly after the kit came out, wasn't it? So, and how many of these you built now?
4.
4.
4.
I don't know
Where do they live?
I don't know how,
Where are they?
I have no idea how I managed to do that. I remember I was speaking to Spencer Pollard at Bolton Show, and he goes, "How did you manage to do 4?" And I was like, "Don't even ask me, because I don't even know."
It's all a blur.
Yeah. Just to be honest, the first version I did was because of the instructions. So if you guys don't know, we build it and review it as a team as it for the instructions. So quite a few of us build it, but obviously the Hellcat is super, like, it's a big thing, so it takes a while to do. And I was building and everything, but I didn't want to build it and not paint it. So while I was checking the instructions, I was painting it as well. So that was before the decals and everything were out. I done that in a month as well, which is, I don't know. Again, I don't know how I managed to do that.
Okay.
Then the second one I done was the shark mouth one, which is the first one with decals, and it's pretty cool as well because that's the second Hellcat that was built in the world.
Yeah.
So where are they now then, your Hellcats? Have you got them, or the Airfix, or?
Airfix, I got them. Yeah, it makes sense for them. I think there's 4 of them I built.
But there's a great build about it. So if you are wanting to have a look, you know, he's done a great step-by-step all the way through on that one, and it turned out absolutely fantastic, as you can see just down in here.
As well is that I don't think a lot of people might not know about this, but there's something called Airfix Workbench.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so if you type, I can't know where it is on the website, but if you type on Google, type in Airfix Workbench, there's normally a blog every like 2 weeks or something like that. I don't know what's happening now because of the whole virus situation, but there's normally a blog every 2 weeks, and you normally get pictures and information about that first before anyone else. And that's kind of the reason why I can't post up stuff before it's released on there as well, because it gets shown on there first. So like the Tiger Moth builds, those two, the one done in both decal schemes, I done those a couple of weeks ago, and that was released and shown on there. The Spitfire and Hurricane, those are also on there, and it's just quite nice to show my work as well. But it's good for you guys to understand more about the product that you guys might not know anywhere else. I mean, like a lot of questions that I do see get asked, just generally, a lot of it, some of it is answered on that Airfix Workbench, and it's quite interesting. Just maybe just have a look at it. Not trying to, have a look, just see what you guys think anyway, because not a lot of people know about it anyway. So something for people who go check out.
Well, what I'll do is I'll find the links and I'll link it below on the show notes and everything when it gets properly done tomorrow, when it gets re-rendered and everything. I'll put them down in there so we can do it. But no, thank you very much for the massive insight into all of this. That's it.
To be honest, I didn't even get through most of the stuff that we were probably planning on getting through. There's quite actually, time just flew by. It's been almost
it does. That's the thing. It just flies when we do this. But the plan is obviously what we do. We'll get Pramjit back on if you're happy to come back on. Now he's relaxed and sitting back. Now he's casual. He's fine. He's like this at the beginning. He's like rabbit in the headlights. But we'll get you back on again, and then to say when this horrible all this thing goes down, you're going to come down here and you can bring some bits and pieces, and we can have a proper sit down and chat and go through everything, and we'll do a proper show of it, recorded and everything, face to face. And Matt can come down if you want, and the gang, and we'll grill you down here. Then we can waterboard you to find out when my Wessex is coming out.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't mind doing this again. So if people like have more questions or something like that, or something I haven't answered properly, or you just want a bit more information, just write it down, and then when I'm back on again, then we can ask it, because there are still some more stuff there's so much stuff that I can talk about in terms of like the design process. I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface, to be honest.
There we go. We'll call this part one.
So much more to talk about.
Right, well that's all right then. We'll have you back on in a week or two, and we'll call this part one then, and then we'll have part two.
To be honest,
and we'll get him back in and go through it all.
Yeah, there's still a lot of stuff to talk about, so if people do want to shout up another question or something I haven't answered properly, or you just want a bit more information about, just give me a shout. And then when I'm back on next, because obviously I'm just at home in my flat, because obviously I didn't explain about how I got this job as well.
No, which is quite... it. So go on then quickly, how did you get it?
I asked for the job at Telford.
That's it, and that's how you do it, people. You just got to be the right place, right time.
That was the first year I met you as well, and that was all the way back in 2015.
Yeah.
So
the days.
I've been to Telford 5 years in a row since then. So the past 3-4 years I've been to Telford as a modeler, and then the past 2 years I've been with Airfix. So it's quite interesting to be on 2 different sites.
That's it. Yeah. Dream job. That's it.
I remember I was doing that clamp. When I was doing my uni project, I was doing that clamp, isn't it?
That's it. The hand. So Epic's going to release that.
No,
The
it wasn't
helping
that
hand.
great project. Yeah.
Definitely. But
Still
no,
all that as well. So yeah.
very good. Right. Okay. Well, we'll call it there, guys, because obviously we'll run over and it'll click in a minute. So, but thank you very, very much for coming. We will get you back on in a week or two then, and we'll carry on this conversation. So there's a lot more to go on. The guys are saying they remember the hand in live chat. We used to talk about it on Saturday mornings and that as well, wouldn't it? And live waterboarding, apparently. Is that allowed on YouTube? Don't know. We'll find out. But we will. But I'd like to thank you, obviously, mate, for doing this and everything. It's an absolute pleasure. And as I say, it's been great seeing you going along with Airfix and coming through and everything like that as well. It's one of those things. It's really nice to see somebody who's into the hobby, getting involved with it, and then following their dream and now careering it as well. It's really nice to be able to see that. So,
yeah, another thing as well I can talk about next time is sort of design decisions as a modeler. Like, so like when I design a kit, how do I take into consideration from a modeler's point of view, not just a designer's point of view?
Which
That
is
sort of
what
stuff.
I think we've all wanted for a long time, because you feel, don't you,
Yeah,
sometimes,
which
like,
is
why
kind of
would
the
they
main
do
reason-
that? It's clearly not a
Yeah,
modeler, you know?
Yeah, which is the main reason why I kind of got hired as well, because I'm a modeler, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
That's it. Modeler first, designer second, and that's what you want, because then you've got the passion for doing it. That's
yeah, exactly.
You know, that's
that
what
was
I always say.
the main thing. Yeah.
But yes, but everyone's down there saying fantastic show, and thank you very much, and they all want you back on as well, so that's really great as well.
That's
So
great.
yes, goodo. We'll be back with you tomorrow afternoon. Obviously, we'll be doing a live thing. What time, Matt?
Usual 3 till 5, yeah.
3 till 5 tomorrow.
Yep.
So we'll be back with you on that one, making our way through as always. We'll do the weekly roundup and all those bits and pieces as well on that one as always. Next part of the MiG will be up. It's fully weathered now and all the rest of it. So weathering's done, the lights are on, the chinny things on, and all the bits and pieces. I've got all the pylons done, all of that. So hopefully by tomorrow it will be in flight, because I'll get the acrylic bent, do the filming for that, and we'll get it in flight and moving on with that one. So that one's coming on quite nicely. And obviously we'll be carrying on with Buccaneers, Airfix Buccaneers, clearly promotional, and Hella. We won't mention Hella tonight. We're allowed to talk about Hella with Airfix at the same time. But no, thank you very much for joining us, though, mate.
Kit did look pretty good, though.
Yeah, no,
That head kit
coming
did
along.
look pretty good. I saw that a couple of days ago, and I was like, that's not a bad kit for all the way back then.
I was going to say, incredible for its age. As I say, yes, never mind. Good. Right, thank you very much, everybody in live chat and everyone. That's it. Keep calm, carry on, wash your hands. Remember your social distancing, everybody, and we will see you all again very, very soon. So thank you very much to Pramjit. Thank you very much to Matt, and we will see you all again very, very soon. So say goodbye, boys.
Good night.
Wavy, wavy. Cheers, guys. Thank you.